they respond and say yes. And their story is incredible, and I'm so excited for you all to be able to hear them share their call from God and what's been going on as they are missionaries to Mexico. So let's go ahead and welcome Loyd and Kelly this morning.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, family. We really appreciate being here. We are Loyd and Kelly. In April last year, or an on-the-job training, they not considered really a full missionary. We have a mentor missionary, and you help alongside of them, and it's usually a 2-year appointment. We were able to go 31 months, and so we left August of 2016, and we got back last April. We also were approved in April to become career missionaries, and so we're going back now. We're itinerating, raising funds for our budget. The budget is set by Springfield, and we're going back as career missionaries. But let me jump backwards now and start before we became missionaries. Kelly and I always thought we would be missionaries, and we got married thinking we'd be missionaries. But life happens. Kelly was the church secretary at our home church. Our home church is Morningside Assembly of God in Sioux City, and she was church secretary for Pastor Tom Jacobs and then for Pastor Johnny. And we were helped out at church. And I had a construction company, and I had guys that worked for me, and we did church. We always, church was our thing. You know, people kind of look at you kind of sideways when you go to church 3-4 times a week, and you're just like, whoa, that's kind of strange, ain't it? And then we just raised our kids with JBQ, Pee Wee Quiz. We'd come to Carroll several times on Pee Wee Quiz, and so we weren't for sure. We figured if we were going to be missionaries, we needed to volunteer in our church and do our part, bloom where we were planted. And so we were planted there. We're going to do whatever we know to do to help. We helped in the nursery. If I only had a couple hours to live, I'd want to spend it in the nursery because I'd be ready to go. So we helped. I was Royal Ranger commander. I worked with the Royal Rangers. We were on the missions board. That was supposed to be a 2-year appointment. We were on that for 8 years. And so we just volunteered, and we started, we better get our credentials and start working on our credentials. We worked on our credentials, and our kids are growing, and we talked about missions. Missions was our dinner table conversation. We prayed for our missionaries that we had prayer cards for, and now our kids are in 8th grade. Our daughter's in 8th grade. Let's go to the next slide. Our daughter's in 8th grade. Our son is 10 years old, and we're going to go on a mission trip. We've done week-long missions trip several different times, Kelly and I, sometimes Kelly, sometimes I, sometimes together. And we'd gone to different countries. El Salvador is one of the countries that we've been to a couple times, and we love El Salvador. And our kids are now old enough to go. We're going to go as a family. And so our church normally goes annually to Mexico, northern Mexico. Nikki and Janie Ryder is the missionaries there. They're from the Rocky Mountain District. And they're the missionaries there that our church always, every year we'd go for a week. Our church would go for a week. And so we're going to go as a family to them and make sure my kids understand what rough living's like. They put us up in a nice hotel, and my kids are like, oh yeah, this ain't rough. But we started working, and it was a great week. It was a great week as a family to spend time together. And we get back, and our daughter got bitten by the missions bug and says, Dad, I think we need to be missionaries by the time I'm a senior in high school, or we failed God. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. My business is doing great. I'm making the most money I've ever made in my life. Things are really going good. We got a nice house. We got nice cars. Things are, things are going good. I'm like, maybe God's, we're pretty old now. They probably won't accept us. We're too old, and they probably won't take us. I was trying to give her all kinds of reasons why that's probably bad timing. and that she may not have heard from God. But Kelly and I was talking. Yes, it's possible. We filled out the application to become missionary associates. This was okay with everybody except for our son. He didn't like that idea. We don't need to leave the States. But so we get the application filled out, and we send it in to Springfield, and our life all of a sudden turns upside down. Our son started having seizures, and one night at Ranger he had a seizure, and it wasn't a grand mal seizure, it was just a focal, just enough to scare the snot out of me. I was scared, just like, wow. Go to the doctor. Next Wednesday he had an MRI. Doctor calls us after church again on a Wednesday night and says, you guys got problems. That ain't good when the doctor calls you after church and says you got problems. And our son ended up with a golf ball-sized tumor in his occipital lobe. And we ended up at Omaha Children's Hospital. They said, well, we could cut it out. They did all kinds of tests and stuff. We could cut it out, but he'll probably lose vision, and who knows what other side effects. So at this time, we just happened to be working for a chief oncologist, a cancer doctor for Sioux City at the cancer center. We were working at his house. We'd worked for him and his wife several years. And God is faithful. No matter what, God is faithful. Through thick and thin, God is with you. But they gave us advice and said, hey, can you come over to our house on Saturday? Let's look at your MRI. He's giving me all kinds of advice, and I'm badgering him with all kinds of questions. Last time I don't know nothing about medical stuff. Last time I was in the hospital was when my kid was born. And he's just saying, you got to get another opinion. So we ended up at Iowa City. We got another opinion. They said it can't stay in. It has to come out. And so they said, we don't know what the side effects will be. You'll probably lose some vision. They were pretty certain that he's going to lose some vision. And we called Springfield to ask them if they could put our application on hold. We don't know which door is going to open, which door is going to close. We're just following God. We're putting our trust in the Lord. And they said, we have to have surgery. So right before surgery, I go, hey, could you do another MRI to see if this thing's gone away, because I've been praying and fasting. And knowing what to do, trust the Lord with all your heart. It's easy to say until you got to go through it. But he's faithful. God is faithful. And at the end of the week, the doctors said we won't know what the side effects are until later after the surgery. And after the MRI, I was on the MRI. After the MRI, the tumor was still there. And so they go, it'll be an 8-hour surgery. It took 6 hours. It was the longest 6 hours of my life. But God is faithful. And so they go, we won't know what the side effects are until after the surgery. And as he's waking up, I'm like, hey, can you see me over here? Can you see me here? Can you see me here? He's like, yeah, I can see you, Dad. At the end of the week, they did a vision test, and they said, quit trying so hard. You can see from ear to ear, head to toe, no blind spots, had no motor skill problems, he forgot how to read, but he learned that again, so that wasn't a big deal. And so God is very faithful. And so we got approved to become missionary associates. We hit the field August of 2016. We sold our house. When you start selling your stuff, people that worked with you and thought you were strange when you were going to church, they really think you flipped your lid when you start selling equipment and trucks and houses and cars. They really think you went off the deep end then. And then we hit language school, and language school was probably the toughest year of our life. Made brain surgery look like a piece of cake. Because I was probably arrogant or ignorant, or both, thinking that, in 1 year I could learn Spanish. One subject for 8 hours a day, and then homework, piece of cake, I should have this, no problem. But when you get old, you don't learn as quick, and that was the problem. So we ended up in Mexico in August of 2017 with our mentor missionaries, Nikki and Janie Ryder, and they were gracious to have us. It's awesome. He worked construction, industrial construction, and pastored a small church before he became a missionary. He became a missionary. He took it over when he was in his 50s. We're now in our 50s. We're taking it over from them eventually. And God is faithful. But these next few stories isn't about us. It's about what we've got to do. It's about the support that we received from the state of Iowa. We're AGWM missionaries from the state of Iowa. And so what we're talking about in Philippians chapter 4, verse 17, and I'm paraphrasing, Paul is talking to the Philippian church about how he wants to see the support that that church gave him be credited to their account more than he's willing to see their gift. He looks forward to the day when it's credited to your account, and we look forward to that day. We've gotten to go this, but when you guys are in heaven, and the account that he's talking about is your account in heaven. Store up your treasures in heaven, and this will be credited to your account. And this is the account that, you know, you really don't know what's going to be up there. I don't know what's in my account in heaven, but once you get there, you'll know. And we want to, this is some of the things that we've done, so we'll continue on.
Just for clarification, I have 4 months yet before I'm 50. We don't need. You can go to the next slide. One of the projects that we've been privileged to work on is in the city of Delicias. This young pastor and his wife were doing a feeding program, and they were feeding kids under this tin sunshade on this vacant lot. And the government of the city liked what they were doing, saw that it was making an impact, and they said, we will give you this piece of property, but you have to have a building built within 2 years. So his congregation was mostly kids, and so he contacted his district and to see if they could help him. So his district then contacted us, and we were able to come alongside and partner with him. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. The first church that came down was from Iowa. It was our home church, and the pastor and some of the gentlemen who were in his congregation had the footings ready to go for him, and they were able to do the block walls, get pretty far on that. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. The next team that came down, Loyd and our mentor missionary Nikki had built the trusses, and so they were ready to go up, and they were able to put the trusses up and then do the tin on the top and then start on some bathrooms and kitchens, because you know if you're feeding kids, you got to have a bathroom and you got to have a kitchen. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The next crew that came, there was this great group called the Pew Crew, and they're a group of guys that just build benches. And so they were able to build these benches so that there would be a place to sit, and they kind of finished off the bathrooms and the kitchen. Go ahead and go to the next slide. With each group that came, we were also able to do outreach to the community, to kind of introduce the pastor to the community and the community to the pastor, just kind of get more reach into the community. And the first two teams did kids outreach, and they would do it twice a day, because in Mexico, in this community, they would do they have school 2 times a day. The first group goes in the morning, and the second group goes in the afternoon. The second group goes till 7 o'clock at night, and I'm thinking my kids would not like to go till 7 o'clock at night. But they might like sleeping in the morning, so maybe, I don't know. So they were able to do outreach twice a day, and just to reach out to the kids, kind of like a Sunday school type program, and then some crafts and things. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The third crew that came also did a tent revival, and so they were able to knock on doors in the community, invite people to the church in the evening, and they had a tent set up, and then each evening they were able to invite people, and that tent got a little fuller, and at the end of the week it was full. And when the altar call was given, 3/4 of the people came forward either to rededicate their lives or to give their lives to Christ for the first time. It was fantastic. This last year ago, January, our daughter came down. She's now in college. She came down to visit us during her break, and we were able to return to this church and help them. The pastor was doing an Operation Christmas Child shoebox giveaway. And we were able to go and help him pass out boxes, which was fun for us, because when our kids were little, we filled shoe boxes and sent them somewhere. And so to be able to do that as a family and help distribute those, that was really fun. But it was also cool to see the pastor really connecting with his community, just continuing to work with the kids, working with the community, building up his church, and just how awesome they were doing.
Let's go to the next slide. One thing that was never on my radar was how many cold showers we'd end up taking. And Never figured that into the equation, I guess. Also, how much food we'd eat prepared over a wood fire. I never realized we'd eat that much food over a prepared fire. But from Chihuahua, we live in the city of Chihuahua, which is 4 hours south of El Paso. And then from Chihuahua, you go west and south, and it's about 8-hour van drive up into the mountains, and it's like Colorado or the Black Hills. And the indigenous tribe, the Tarahumara people, live in this area. And we partner with Mexican AG missionaries that are missionaries to the indigenous people. And there's like 3 or 4 missionaries that we work with up in the mountains to the Tarahumara people. And they noticed that the kids would walk to school. The government has schools throughout the mountains, and the kids would walk to these schools from different villages to the village that has the school. This village that has the school, you can get there by vehicle. And to get there by vehicle, this particular village that we're talking about is 6 miles off the paved road, and it takes about 2 hours to get there because of the Jeep trails. There's 30-some water crossings to get to the village that has the school. And then from the village that has the school, there's other villages out in the mountains, and it may be an hour walk, up to about 4.5-hour walk, one way uphill, both ways in the snow. That's our grandparents that did that. These guys walk through the mountains, and they walk fast. The kids are fast walking. They're just like, we don't need to walk this fast. They play this game. You kick this ball for like 12 miles. And after 12 miles, you determine the winner. Well, you win. I ain't running no 12 miles to kick the ball. But let's go to the next slide. So they walked to school, and the missionaries noticed that when they got to school, they'd sleep outside the school through the week, and whatever food they brought with them is what they had to eat for the week. So the missionaries built dormitories, and you see the pictures of the dormitories in a kitchen. And so they feed the kids. They also give them a place to stay throughout the week. And then so on Monday nights and Tuesday nights, we're able to do a Bible lesson, songs, and dance. And it's usually translated from Spanish to Tarahumara. Tarahumaran's their native language. They don't usually learn Spanish until they go to school. But we're able to tell them about Christ and tell them about Bible stories and throughout the week. Wednesday, there's an AG church in this particular village, and everybody goes to the church, and it's a social event, and not everybody's saved, but everybody will go to church, and the kids will go back to school. And then Thursday night, we do another Bible story and stuff, and so we help out with this. We also, during this time, let's go to the next slide. We're also doing maintenance on the dormitories and on the kitchen and things. Just with that many kids, things just need a lot of maintenance. And it's a lot of fun. It's they're just their nature. They don't trust anybody. They don't smile. They don't laugh. They don't look you in the eyes. There's nothing funny until they come to Christ. Once they come to Christ, then a little more jovial. They have a lot more smiles, and it's just a huge change. And the families, I shouldn't be amazed about this, but I am, because you read about it in the Bible and you've experienced it in your own life. But the Tarahumaran's normal income is about $25 a year. They have about an acre of ground, and they usually raise corn. And the guys who's become more involved with church, helped out with church, tithing to church, his acre of ground will do better than the acre right next to it. And you can, I mean, it's a significant difference. They get in the same amount of rain, same amount of sun, same dirt, but difference is Christ. And I mean, we can see it in our own lives, but when you just see it, and just their kids are doing better, their family's doing better. It's amazing, the transformation after you come to Christ and just allow God to be the Lord of your life, and it's incredible. But we really love working up in the Tarahumara area and up in the mountains in that area, and we take a lot of cold showers.
You can go to the next slide. Another area we get to work in is in the city of Juarez at an orphanage, and this young lady up in the corner there is Josefina. She's a credentialed minister with the Assemblies of God in Mexico, and she began the orphanage in her home. She would be going out about her business and going to the store, whatever, she'd see kids beside the road, and if they looked like they had nowhere to go, and she'd question them. And if they didn't, she'd take them home with her. Well, eventually her house got too crowded, and so she called her district and said, I need an orphanage. And so they built her an orphanage. When we've been there have been between 90 and 125 people on the campus, so she has a lot of kids there. And she's just an awesome woman of faith. She makes sure those kids get a hug every day, gets them all cleaned up, ready for school. Her granddaughter's coming alongside of her now, kind of helping her with that. I think just it's nice for her to have a partner in her ministry now. We heard one story where they had heard of another orphanage in Juarez that had run out of food, and so she gathered her kids and said, hey, this orphanage is out of food, we're going to send them ours. And they're like, what are we going to eat? And she's like, God will provide. And so they prayed, they sent the food, and within just a couple of hours, somebody's knocking on their gate with a pickup load of food. And I'm thinking, wow, what a teaching lesson for those kids, about how God will provide for them, because a lot of them have come from, just bad situations, through no fault of their own. Their parents have made poor choices or have been killed. And so they're in this orphanage, and it's fun for us to get to go there. We have a couple of college groups that come down. The University of Valley Forge in Pennsylvania comes and helps us. They do some children's church and outreach there, and then they do some light painting or construction and fixing of the facilities. And we also have the university, or the North Dakota State has a Chi Alpha group that comes down, and they're fun to work with as well. They just love coming to the orphanage. We have this group also from the state of Washington. Some of them winter in Arizona. And so every year they'll cross over into Juarez, and they like to do solar projects. The first year they put solar panels up, they were able to cut the orphanage's electric bill in half. They were excited about that. So they did solar panels another year. A year ago, about this time, they came back and did solar water heaters on the girls' dorm. So now the girls have warm showers, but the boys still get the cold showers. They don't do laundry on site because they have their water. They don't have a well or city water, so the water is trucked in by the city. And so the water truck will come several times a week. They'll fill up these huge tanks that they have, and then so they try not to use too much water, because you can imagine with that many people you can go through a lot of water. So they don't do their laundry on site. So we had one of the college groups did laundry for them. So we filled that church van just packed with laundry. They ended up doing 95 loads of laundry. That's a lot of laundry. I'm pretty sure anybody else waiting for those machines was not very happy. So it's been fun for us to get to work there. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. They love having people there just to interact and just get lots of hugs. They love Loyd because Loyd is Mr. Fun Guy, and he is not afraid to just kind of roughhouse and wrestle with the boys, and they love getting the hugs. And even the older kids, they're kind of like, yeah, no, yeah, no, yeah, no. They think they do, but then they want to still look cool, and just like teenagers in the U.S., they got to uphold their image, but they love to interact and have fun. And it's just they want to know, when we come back, we usually end up a couple of times, 2 to 3 times a year for week-long spans at the orphanage doing maintenance, repair, outreach. And we'll go back and we'll say hi to them, and they're like, you remember me? And we're like, yeah, we remember you. And they're like, it's just like they want to know somebody is remembering them. Yes, we remember you. But even more importantly than that, we have to remember that it's not us that they need to know that remembers them. God remembers them. And God is going to provide. God is going to supply what they need. And if we can help them in any way to come into a relationship with God and to know that God is going to supply their needs through life. Yeah, you don't have the best home life. Yeah, it's kind of stinky that this is where you ended up. But do you know what? This could be the best thing that ever happened in your life. God is going to provide. And I think that's something we need to remember even in ourselves. God remembers where we're at. When we were going through brain surgery, when we were, medical things were just way above our head, we knew that God was with us. God remembered us. And we have to remember, no matter what we're going through, God will remember.
One night at the orphanage, I usually horse around with the teenage boys and stuff. They're more the guys I'm always messing with. They're always giving them a hard time. And they usually call me crazy at the orphanage. They go, crazy is a key. Crazy's here. And one night, lunch is usually the main menu. That's the menu, or meal, not menu. Is the main lunch is our main food. You get chicken or you get meat, and it's a huge portion. Supper is usually just a bowl of oatmeal or a bowl of masa or something. We had some masa this one night. And they go, Loyd. And when they say my name, they're very serious. Whenever they use Loyd, and they're taking the spoon and holding it down by the dog, and the dog wasn't licking it. And I go, well, do you want mine? You can have mine. And they go, they're like, what are you going to do? I go, hey, there's a hot wings place just down the block. You get somebody to open up the shack or the gate, because the gate's always locked. You get somebody to unlock the gate for us. Let's go down there, and I'll have you three go with me, and you can order, so we don't get gringo tax. And so we ran down. They opened up the gate, and that was just my table that I usually sit with, and it's like six 15-year-olds or 16-year-olds right in there that I just normally sit and eat with and horse around with and call them names, and they call me names. And so we walk down there, and I go, okay, get us 3 orders. And so they got 3 orders of hot wings, and the guy says, well, it's going to be 40 minutes. I was like, 40 minutes? They're going to miss us in 40 minutes. So we got to go back. I go, I'll go by myself, because the orphanage isn't in a great neighborhood either. And so we all go back, and I go back and get the food, and we come back, and we're back by we have some construction trailers and flatbed trailers, and we're back. I go, don't tell anybody, because we won't have anything you tell anybody. And so we're eating it, and they were enjoying they were just loving the hot wings. And every time I go back after that, they're like, remember that night? That was the best night ever. That was great. That was awesome. They're just like, oh, just over some hot wings. It's just like, but God is faithful. Let's go to the next slide. One of the areas when we're not traveling, we travel about 50% of the time. We were home sleeping in our own bed of the 12 months that we were, no, it's more than that. 21 months that we were in Mexico, 10 of those months we were at our own bed. The other 10 months we were sleeping someplace else. And when we're home, we help out with a church in our colonia. We don't live in a great colonia. It's not terrible, but it's not good. It's kind of a typical neighborhood, dirt roads, dogs in the street, roosters crowing. There's a neighborhood store across the street and down. I can eat all the eggs in the morning, go and get eggs, and be back before Kelly even knows that we ran out of eggs. And so the first time I go into the store, he goes, did your wife have problems with her paperwork? Meaning, did she get deported? I'm like, no, my wife's a gringa. Why are you living here? We can afford here. And he's like, really? Things must be really rough in the States. It's a good neighborhood. It just makes all of our neighbors think we're really crazy or nuts. Because we'll take them cookies. Kelly will make cookies, and we got neighbors on all of our sides that I'll talk to and practice my terrible Spanish with and give them food. They don't know what to think of us. But there's a church in our area that's, they do Royal Rangers on Sunday morning, and they do a bus ministry or a van ministry to a poorer colonia. And these kids are they're lucky to keep shoes on their feet. They're so poor. And so they bus them into our colonia or our neighborhood or our section of town. Chihuahua's about 850,000 people. And so there's lots of different areas. You can go 20 minutes away. You can have houses that could compete with any big houses in the States. It's a gated community. It's fancy. And then just 5 minutes away, they don't have any running water, no sewer, and living in a pallet house, a house made out of pallets or a shack made out of pallets with a piece of tin on top. And so we help out with Royal Rangers in this church, and the kids love the interaction. Just, it helps me with my Spanish. The kids that are bashful and shy, and I always help read the lesson, and after I read, they're no longer bashful or shy or think they got bad reading, because after I read, they're like popping up, I could do better than this guy. He set the bar pretty low. I think I could. And so they're always helping me, and they just really enjoy the interaction. And I enjoy the help with my Spanish. But as we go back, let's go to the last slide. As we return, we're on return to Chihuahua, but there's an area that's south. It's about 8-10 hours south of Chihuahua and 8-10 hours north of Mexico City. Mexico City is about 20 hours south of Chihuahua, so it's about in the middle. And it's the city of Aguas Caliente. It's 1 million people, and it's in the state of Aguas Caliente. And there's a strip through Mexico, and it goes from like Monterrey, Saltillo, Zacatecas, Aguas Caliente. They call it the dark heart of Mexico. And in the city of, as a field fellowship, as U.S. missionaries to Mexico, we're targeting the city of Aguas Caliente. And it's 0.2% evangelical. They have 5-10 churches, a handful of churches, evangelical churches, Baptist and Quaker. There's no AG churches in this city at all. The main religion is Catholicism, but the Catholicism is different. Jesus isn't a God, he's just one of many gods. They worship, the Catholics have never had a church split. They've incorporated all kinds of gods under their heading. You can be Catholic and worship the sun god, the harvest god, the moon god, the ocean god. And so there's lots of different gods. Jesus isn't represented as the Son of God. And so in this area, we're looking to just plant some churches over the next few years. As we go back, we're looking to make inroads into this area. And as a field fellowship, so if you'd pray about Aguas Caliente and being able to reach them with the gospel and give them a true representation of who Jesus really is, we'd appreciate it. And
so as we go back, we do need people who are willing to partner with us in prayer. When we were going through Taylor's medical stuff and when we were getting ready to go the first time, we could feel people's prayers. Prayer is so important. We can't do it alone, so if everybody could pick up a prayer card as you leave, we would so appreciate that, because we believe in the power of prayer. It's huge. Also, we need people who are willing to partner with us. We can't go back until we reach 100% of our budget, so we need people who are willing to give. And then maybe you're feeling called to go. I know your youth are heading to El Salvador coming up. It's an awesome opportunity. It will change their lives. It will wreck them for good. So do take advantage of those opportunities that your church is supplying. Go on those short-term trips. And then maybe God's calling you for a missionary associate assignment. Maybe 1 or 2 years. You want to say, yeah, I want to give a year or two to see what this is about. Or maybe you're willing to give a lifetime. Come back at the table, see us. We'd love to give you some information, connect you with a website, some just information that could help you to get where you're needing to go. Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity just to come and share our hearts and how we feel God is moving in Mexico.
Any questions or comments? We're early. Yes, ma'am.